guys! Before I get into the contents of today's video, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment with any critiques, questions, or suggestions. Today's video is going to be a little behind the scenes of my Etsy and how I make my Etsy products, as well as showing you guys the process of making a new design that I just finished. With all that said, let's jump right in. The first thing that I wanted to do was to create some new pin holders. When I ship my pins, I put them on these cardstock pieces similar to how earrings are packaged, but now that I changed my name, I need to make some new ones. To do this, I wrote out my new name and then I just began looking through a bunch of different fonts to figure out which one that I wanted. I found this one that I really liked because it made the MMA portion stick out. Then I played around with some borders and shadows and colors until I found something that I was happy with. The only thing that I didn't like about this new name is that it doesn't say anything about my faith. So I had the idea of taking the T and turning it into a cross. So I made the T lowercase and then I drew this purple sash over it. I love doodling the draping cloth over the cross in all my notebooks and stuff, so I thought that this was a perfect representation. Once I was happy with that, I created a new canvas that had the dimensions I wanted for the packaging cards and proportioned the name accordingly. Then I copied that whole canvas onto a canvas the size of standard paper and fit as many of the cards onto it as I could. I also wanted to take this opportunity to create a type of business card with some QR codes on it that I could hand out to people when I was out. At first, I played around with this vertical format that would only have the Etsy QR code on it. My plan was to carry around extra stickers that didn't quite make it to sell and hand them out with the card to try to bring people to my Etsy. But after some time, I just wasn't happy with this, and so I decided to create a more typical business card. I changed the canvas to a horizontal format and created matching QR codes for my YouTube and Instagram. I also flipped over to Canva instead of using my drawing software just because it's designed for this kind of stuff, so it made it easier for me to get the results that I wanted. After playing around for a little bit, I landed on something that I was happy with. It has all 3 QR codes on it and I thought it looked really cute. I did the same process of copying the whole design onto a canvas that is the size of a standard piece of paper and arranged it so that I could fit as many cards as I could onto one page. Once that was set, I printed out both the pin packagers and the business cards and used my mom's paper cutter to cut them out as precisely as I could, and somehow, even with a paper cutter, I still had a hard time cutting straight lines. The next thing I wanted to do, and kind of the whole reason for this video, was to create a new design that I had floating around in my head for a while now. If you don't know, I have chronic anxiety, which causes me to struggle with overthinking. I was thinking about how overthinking steals your joy away, and I thought it would be kind of a funny image if it was a brain eating a smiley face to represent that. I played around with that concept for a while, but I just couldn't get it looking right. So I decided to switch gears a bit, and I went with this brain looming over the smiley face instead. This here was my first draft just to see if I liked that concept, and after playing with it for a little bit, I landed on a sketch that I was happy with, and I went in with the line art. For my line art, I like to set my pen sensitivity very high to try to get some natural line variation. I also like to try to use thinner lines on the inside and a thick border all the way around. I also like to go back and thicken the lines anywhere that they intersect. For the shading, I knew where I wanted it to go, but I didn't know what color I wanted it to be. I started off by using a blue because I thought I wanted a cooler shading color, but I didn't really like that, so I switched it to red, and I think the warmer shade looks nicer. I also had an issue with the shadow on the ground. For some reason, I just could not get it to look right, and I could not figure out what was wrong with it, so I ended up just copying the brain, making it the shading color, and warping it until I was happy. And then after that, I went in with some soft shading because I felt like the hard shading alone just wasn't enough for this design. I also ended up putting the word overthinking on the brain instead of my original idea of writing overthinker under it because I felt like that portrayed the concept a little bit better. Now that I had the new design, I wanted to use this as an opportunity to take inventory of my products. I created this spreadsheet of all my designs, and the things I needed to restock were my Anxiety Told You To pins, the Progress Not Perfection pins, the Donut pins, the Cat Shark pins, and my hats, and of course whatever I wanted to turn the new design into. For the new design, I knew that I wanted to make it into stickers, so I started with that. To get the proper size, I just copied the design onto one of my previous sticker sheets and used that to make the layout. Once that was all set and printed, I picked out which holographic laminating paper I wanted to use and pressed it onto the paper. Now, before when I was making stickers, I was making both matte stickers, which didn't have the laminating paper on it, and the holographic, but I'm not going to be making the matte ones anymore because they just don't hold up as well as the holographic ones. The laminating paper, while it's not waterproof, it does give the stickers a lot of extra protection from water, so they just tend to last longer, and I also just really prefer the way that they look over the matte ones. And here's how they look, both the normal size and the mini, and I think these came out really cute. Moving on to the pins, I repeated the same process of copying the design onto a previous sheet. I had to lighten the design a lot because the first batch came out like this. Now, I ran into a bit of a problem at this part. I'm working with a new printer and it was distorting the colors, so because of that I had several unusable sheets and some of the pins just did not come out good enough to sell. I've mostly figured out the printer now, so the next batches should be fine, and it honestly is pretty normal to have some that just do not come out good enough to sell, especially if I'm going to work with some sort of new material or a new machine. Once everything was cut out, it was time to bake the pins. For my pins, I like to use print-on shrink paper, which is a paper that when you put it in the oven or you expose it to heat, it shrinks into a hard plastic. Once they're completely done, I like to place a bowl or some other heat-resistant object on top to make sure that they lay flat, and then I just let them cool and you're left with a nice hard plastic. Now for your viewing enjoyment, some satisfying shrinking footage. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this printer was distorting the colors, and unfortunately I hadn't figured it out in time when I printed the donut design, so these turned out way too dark and I just wasn't able to restock them. The next thing I like to do for my pins is I like to give them a resin top coat. This provides extra durability and protection to the designs, and it gives the pins a really nice feel. Typically when you're working with resin, you're gonna wanna wear gloves. To be honest, I kind of completely forgot about that when I was working with this. And also the gloves make it really hard for me to get the top coats right sometimes, and I find them really annoying. And I know it's for safety, so that shouldn't matter, but I work with such a small amount of resin, and I only ever work with it for the most part when I'm doing these pins, and I don't restock them super often, so I typically don't wear the gloves, but I do keep wipes on hand in case it spills anywhere. But if you are going to work with resin, especially if you're going to work with it regularly, you're probably going to want to wear some gloves. Now, like I said, in every batch that I make, there's always some that just don't come out good enough to sell. In this batch, there was a couple where the resin leaked over the side of the pin, and there was also a couple where the resin smeared the ink around. I think this is due to the new printer, because I've never had this issue before. And the very last step is to actually glue on the pin backings. like to make sure these are very secure by going back over the top with some more super glue. Here they all are. Unfortunately, only one of the cat shark pins came out nicely and it had some color distortion, so I decided that I wasn't going to add it to the restock. So no new cat shark pins, but I still do have some available. And I unfortunately realized upon trying to get pictures of the new designs that the pins were just way too dark. So I decided to not sell these, but I do plan on making another batch of lighter ones in the future because I do want this design to be a pin. And unfortunately, I also couldn't restock the Anxiety Told Me To pins because upon coming back to them about a week later, I realized that they had all become super blurry. So again, I think that that's the fault of the printer. So overall, I ended up with a great amount of the Progress Not Perfection pins, which is awesome because I was completely sold out of those. And I have a better grasp on the new printer. The last thing that I wanted to restock was the hats. I hadn't made any in a while, so I just wanted to get a few more in stock. This process is pretty simple. I use dark fabric transfer paper, which just irons right onto the fabric. The trickiest part of this is getting the design to lay flat on the curved surface, but this batch actually came out really great, and I was able to put all of them up for sale. Here are the two that I wanted to restock. I also have two other hat designs. I have a black version of the Brain, and I have an Anxiety Told Me To hat, which I thought was already on my Etsy, but I actually never released it. But it's up there now and for sale along with the other three hats. I also got some new and updated photos of everything and updated the listings to reflect the restock and any changes such as the No More Matte stickers. Here is a quick glimpse into everything that I sell. It's all handmade and I have lots of different designs. And while this was a behind the scenes video, the actual behind the scenes is way more chaotic. I put all the footage together in a way that made sense, but normally it's me doing a little bit of one thing and then hopping over to another thing and then coming back to that thing, letting the other thing dry, and then taking a picture of something. So it is a little bit more all over the place than I showed in this video, but that would have made for a very chaotic series of footage. The link to my Etsy is in the description if you would like to check out any of this stuff for yourself. Thank you so much for watching. As usual, I have no idea what the next video is going to be or when it is going to come out, but whatever it is and whenever it does, I hope to see you then. Bye!